You know, we are in good hands, ladies and gentlemen, with young people like this in our world who are leaders. And how about that little girl yesterday who spoke to us? Did everybody else cry at the end? Like, I was like, my husband, we were both like sobbing our eyes out. Stella, you're going to be the last one and then we're going to move on.
Thank you. I think my leadership turning point was I grew up in a country where when I started working, we were in transition as a country. There was a lot of oppression. The place that I was working, there was a lot of discrimination. For some reason, I found myself always in the forefront of speaking for the people. And I remember being called by one of the senior managers and talking to me and said, you know, you have tremendous potential for leadership and you're going to get places as long as you know how to channel your energy and your passion towards doing good. And that was a turning point for me. I've never looked back. Thank you.
That's excellent. Thank you very much for sharing that. So we're going to talk about a couple of different things here. This is, the first person I went to was Michelangelo Caruso. And this is a great quote that he wrote himself. People don't like to take orders, they like to take part. And it speaks to bringing people along on that journey, doesn't it? It really does. So, this is a story about a guy named Larry. Larry was an employee in a company. He was one of the senior managers. There were 12 of them. And the CEO didn't have any children or relatives that he could leave his company to, and he decided that in 1 year's time he was going to retire. And so what he did is he called all 12 of the senior team into his boardroom and he said, I'm going to give you each a seed. And every one of you take these home, plant them, and the person at the end of the year who has the biggest plant will become the CEO of the company. And so everyone took them home and they planted it. And Larry planted his seed, and he watered it, and he nurtured it, and he watered it, and he nurtured it, and nothing happened. And month after month he tried, and his friends' plants were growing, and they were mocking him and laughing at him. Larry, how come your plant isn't growing? And so a year's time went by, and they were called into the office, and the CEO said, all right, let's see everybody's plants. So they had photographs, some had brought them in, and Larry was standing there, and he said, Larry, where's your plant? And he said, well, you know, I tried. My wife and I, we planted it, we nurtured it, we watered it, we cared for it. He said, but it wouldn't grow. And he said, Larry, I'd like you to come to the front of the room. And he put his arm around Larry and he looked out at everybody and he said, ladies and gentlemen, this is the new CEO of our company. I gave you all dead seeds. Larry was the only one who had the integrity to do the right thing when no one else is looking. I think we all want to be Larrys. Every one of us. This is a very personal story about leadership. 2 years ago, my husband and my mom both served as club presidents at the same time. Can you imagine Sunday dinners at our family? All Rotary, all the time. Anyway, this is a photograph of my father. And 3 years ago, I was at the International Assembly where we train our incoming district governors-elect. And I was there for a 2-week period. In the first week, we were training the trainers who would train the governors upon their arrival. So midway through this process, on the Sunday morning, 7 a.m., I received a call from my brother that my father had just had a stroke while he was at church. And so very quickly, I knew that I needed to get home. So we caught the next flight out. Now, before I tell you the rest of the story, let me tell you a little bit about my mom. My mom is one of the greatest moms in the world, and I know we all think that. She was June Cleaver. She did a great job at raising us. But she really didn't have a lot of vocational opportunity. She took care of the books for my dad's tool and die company, but she didn't have a chance to interact a lot in a leadership capacity with others because of the nature of what she was doing. Anyway, She was in Rotary for about 5 years when she was pegged to be club president. And I know that she stressed out about it, and she called me probably about 15 times a day, but that was okay. We were in it together. And anyway, she did a phenomenal job. So fast forward to arriving home, arriving at the hospital, and I walked into the emergency room where he was still there, and he had complete right side paralysis. And my mom and my husband and my brothers went down to the cafeteria to go get a bite to eat. And so I crawled into bed with him, and I was laying there just rubbing his arm. And through very garbled speech, he said to me, "I always thought that I would take care of your mother. But because of Rotary, I now know that she can take care of me." That he had seen the person he loves more in the entire world grow so much through the opportunity of leadership development in Rotary. What a true gift, an extraordinary gift. I'll tell you that he's done a lot of rehabilitation, and he got his license back in the spring, and he's hell on wheels once again. So he's actually at our house taking care of our dog, so I love him for it. I want to just go to a couple of quick slides here about leadership from the Strength Rotary brand to revisit one portion of this, and then we're going to do a bit of Q&A, so we have a chance to do some really great interactivity between all of us. So the building blocks of our brand strategy, there were 3 distinct components. Our essence, and I'm going to go over this in just a moment. Our values, what we believe in. Our values, what was really important to note out of this entire exercise is that Rotary's core values would not change. We needed to refresh, we needed to become more contemporary, we needed to be cleaner, we needed to simplify, but we never want to change our core values. What we wanted to do was activate the language. And finally, our voice. What are the words that we use to express who we are as Rotarians so that everyone knows what it is that we stand for? What is this a photograph of? Let me ask the question differently. What brand is this? Nike. And what is their slogan? Just do it. Well, their essence statement is authentic athletic performance. You've never heard that before. I'm guessing probably not a single person in the room. Well, what's important to note about that is that it drives everything that they do. You don't see a supermodel in their advertisements, you see an athlete. So it really says they stick to what it is that they believe in. So what is Rotary's essence? This took a lot of time to get to these words. This is a very important statement. I'm going to read it. Rotary joins leaders from all continents, cultures, and occupations to exchange ideas and take action for communities around the world. So remember when I said in the beginning about how if we could start to frame how we answer the question, what is Rotary, in a united fashion, that we're singing off the same song sheet, that will start to amplify our message? This is really, really important. And it boils down to these 6 key words. Join leaders, exchange ideas, take action. It absolutely frames who we are as an organization, who we are, what we do, and why it matters. We join leaders, every single one of us together. What do you do when you get a group of leaders together? You exchange ideas. And because we're smart people, we take action. So I want to invite you to go back into your own clubs and talk about this concept. You'll see it alive and well in all of our new rebranded publications on our website. Many of you are using it already in your club materials on your district and club websites, your social media. It's wonderful. But this is the way that we can define ourselves so that people 5 years from now, when they ask, or when you meet someone and you say Rotary, they won't say to you, what is Rotary? You can tell them we're leaders who solve the world's most pressing challenges because we can come together and exchange ideas, and because we are leaders and professional leaders and business leaders, community leaders, we are able to take action and solve these most pressing challenges. So I told you that Rotary's values were not to be taken off the table. But one thing that we did want to do, and values, I don't know if anyone has ever done this as a personal exercise. Show of hands, who's actually sat and thought to themselves before about your own, identifying your own personal core values? You know, it was an exercise I was challenged to do probably about 6 or 7 years ago, and I had never done it. I had never actually sat and meaningfully thought about what are my own personal core values. I mean, I knew I had them, but I hadn't really sat and clearly identified them. And so I offer that up to you because it's a great exercise. And quite honestly now, in terms of going and talking about speeches in different areas, one of the things that I like to talk about is core values and what each of them mean, my own personal core values, and stories that attach to that. So I just offer that up as a suggestion. In terms of Rotary's core values with our activated language, something that makes it more active than just passively saying, here's our 5 core values. We know fellowship, ethics, diversity, service, and leadership are our core values. But you can see with fellowship and global understanding, we build lifelong relationships. So one of the things that happens when you're at an international convention, and again, I'm going to ask a show of hands, how many of you have seen someone across the House of Friendship from another country or another district and went, ah! Most of us have had that experience because we build lifelong relationships in this organization. Ethics and integrity, we honor our commitments. Do we need to say anything other than polio? We have made a promise to the children of the world, and we will keep that promise. Diversity, we connect diverse perspectives. We talked about that a few minutes ago. Vocational expertise, service, and leadership, we apply our leadership to solve the world's most pressing challenges. This is who we are as an organization, and this is the active language that says so clearly who we are, what we do, and why it matters. Our voice, the final category. This was a really interesting part of all of the research that we did in defining who we are as leaders. What were the words that we globally could all agree upon? So, smart, compassionate, persevering, and inspiring. And I say that this was a little bit tricky because, you know, some parts of the world, we feel differently about words than in other parts of the world. So coming to consensus from all areas of the Rotary world was not an easy task. As a matter of fact, early on in the whole process, the firm that we were working with came forward with a statement that I absolutely loved. And it was, if one Rotarian can change a community, unite 1.2 million, and we can change the world. How many of you like that statement? I said at the time, if that doesn't get through, I'll eat my hat. I had to eat my hat. Because you know what? For many of our friends in some of the Asian and countries, some other areas of the world, this was seen to be very braggart. It was seen to be boastful. And we had to get to a place where we had consensus on all of these words. And so when you're describing in your publications, in things you're writing about Rotary, in the way that you're sharing it with your friends, these are 4 very, very, very important words. The last thing before we move into question and answer period during the last few minutes we have together, I just wanted to share with you the reason behind our Rotary signature, if you haven't already learned this. And again, I put this up here, and I know we're in a leadership talk, but I need you to be leaders going out of this room and into your clubs when people still say, how come we're not using the old Rotary wheel, or you know, why are we going through change? We don't like to go through change. People do not like to go through change. It's not something that we're all comfortable with. This was a very important decision that was taken to put our first name next to the Rotary wheel. And it comes full circle back to the slide that I showed you in the beginning of 10, that basically no one knew who we were. The Rotary wheel was not telling people clearly enough. It was telling us, we recognized it, but the rest of the world didn't. And so we pulled out our first name and we put it next to it. And so now there is no way that people don't understand what is Rotary. You see it loud and clear. Now, let's get into a little bit of Q&A. And the first 4 people that I went to in the question that I asked earlier about being a leader, Michael, Nikki, Lena, and Joe, I'm going to have the 4 of you come up on stage. We're going to open up the floor. David, so if I can get you to be our microphone guy again. Do we have